You run a multi-million-dollar flipping business and wholesaling business. Which one, if you were to give one up, which one would you give up first? If you had to choose one.
Flipping business for sure. Rentals, likely. I mean, the rentals are the least profitable, but I mean, it just depends if you're thinking long-term, short-term, and like what stage of your career you're in. But right now, probably the flipping side of things.
That's the one that you keep or the one you give up?
I would give up.
That you give up?
Yeah, but you almost can't. I mean, if you're gonna do, if you have a deal and you invested money in marketing and whatnot, I know a lot of times you do it the way that I did in the beginning too, which is MLS, wholesalers, networking events, and just a referral-based business, no marketing spend or sales team or anything like that. That's the way to go for sure. For most profitable and least overhead, low stress. But the flipping is just...
You say low stress.
For that side of things, I would say so, because then when you add flipping to... I mean, they're both stressful, no doubt, but... When you add the wholesale, I mean, you call it wholesaling, call it whatever you want to call it, but direct to homeowner, you have to have a sales team. You have to have the marketing dialed in. You have a lot more overhead between your payroll and your marketing team and just G&A expenses in general. Versus flipping, I mean, you don't have any of those worries at all. It's just, deal by deal basis. But.
You don't, but I mean, I still have $40,000 a month in mortgages. I have all the contractors who I'm probably spending, anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 depending on the month of how much I'm paying the contractors, and then the electricity, the gas, the everything. I mean, there's a lot of money in this business either way. That's
true. I just think that if you're wholesale, I mean, I know a lot of wholesalers don't flip, but for me, we do both. So if I was to cut one or the other out, on the flipping side, I don't know. I think that on the wholesaling side of stuff, you have a lot more people management than on the flipping side of thing. And with the people management comes a lot more dynamics, and then you have to have an office usually. I mean, you could do things remote, but that's how we do it. We don't do remote. And just a lot more time spent analyzing everything that you're doing, because all the efforts you're putting out, you have to refine it. You have to constantly be training and like helping shape and grow everybody on your team, make sure they're all growing, versus when you're flipping, you may have a few key crucial team members, but you don't have, there's just less personnel. Like on the contracting side, sure, you want to make sure that all the guys are happy, but you're not responsible for their growth as human beings and their career paths. And
my core team is very tight, but then all the contractors are essentially disposable. I could get rid of one today, hire the next one tomorrow. If anybody falls off or anybody stops showing up, I could easily get rid of them, but I don't have to train them. And if they ever act in a way that they're not trained already, they're trained from all their years of experience before they work with me. So I'll pay you, you do the job, and if not, then I fire you. But everyone around you, you have to train and make better.
Right, and they're like third party though. They're not on your team. I mean, you're a team and you guys are working together, but they're 1099 completely separate.
They're assassins essentially, mercenaries.
Exactly. So versus on the wholesaling side, it's just different. And like you said, you have all your hard money payments, utilities, insurance, market risk, all of those different variables. But I've got all of that and the wholesaling side of stuff. And it's just far less risk overall if from my opinion, wholesaling is, because you're not carrying the asset. You're not risking if the market shifts and you lose all this money. I'm sure you got hammered towards the end of last year on some stuff. But last
year I made about 80% of all my money on the first 6 months, maybe even the first 5 months, and then 20%, if that, on the second 6 months of the year.
Did you have any heavy losses, or?
The heaviest loss was $40,000, and then the second heaviest was like $10,000. Where if you talk to other people in this town, I mean, they were losing,
millions.
Millions. Yeah, just millions and millions. And then, I mean, you came from the school of, because you started with Galindo, who's always done things really conservative. And I think you look at things in that way too, to where you analyze all your deals really conservatively. So I couldn't imagine that you lost a lot, because you're not speculative with your ARVs.
Right.
I've never seen you say, this house, you could totally get 650 for it. Where when I look at it, I'm like, man, I only see 610.
Right. No, I try to be realistic, and you're right. He was introduced in the business very conservatively. I think it's more realistic, if anything. We're aware of whenever there's an upside that something could get more location and product type and whatnot, but sometimes it's crazy. I don't know if you've ever seen this. I've actually watched you do this. We'll flip something with whatever the ARV is, and then if you get that number, great, you hit all your numbers. Maybe you go 10, 20 higher. I'll watch some people list stuff for like 50, 70 grand higher than I would think it's worth, and boom, they sell. I'm like, gosh, if we did that on every single one of our deals, if you had all the time in the world, you'd hit some home runs. It's insane. Like I plug into the spreadsheet. I'm like, that's insane. And how do they even get it in appraise? I have no idea, but
I don't know how they do it. They get so lucky. And we all did in 2021, 2022. Yeah. I got lucky on everything I did. But they were coming in over list price. I still listed it at what I thought was a solid price, and then they'd come over 30,000 or 40,000 over.
Yeah. And not to mention there was one that we sold you on Manassas.
Yeah.
And it was not only did you get significantly more, but you did like next to nothing to it. It was not a full, we probably had whatever, $30,000-$40,000 budget. Like he must have put like $7,000 or $10,000 in it and got that much more. But
that was from me being a realtor to where I just knew, because of the corner lot, because of how big that lot was, I knew the people in that area were looking. They didn't care if it was flipped. They wanted the value of it. Right. With everything else around there's a certain unique advantage to where sometimes when you're a realtor, you're like, I just know they'll buy it as is. So I just cleaned it up a bit. I spent you're right, like 8,000 or 10,000, and then put it back on market and crushed.
I get reminded of it often too, not just with the investment side, but when we refer out our retail leads to the agents, and they're like, we'll run the numbers, whatever what we had to put into it, even if we're just skimming and cleaning it up and whatever, and then what we get at the end, and then you watch them do nothing the way that it was when you walked it. No money was put into it, and they get more, or what you thought they would. And it's like a constant learning lesson of, it's just the default. You got your model and it works, and at scale you kind of got to stick to it generally, and it's habitual. We're used to doing them right and putting them out, and then you don't have a care in the world. In my opinion, I think it's less risky in a sense, because then if the market shifts, you're not stuck saying like, all right, dropping price to try to move the inventory, to move the property, dropping the price, or pulling it off, renovating it, then going further. Like, you're not wasting any of this time. You have good products sitting there, and there's not all that downtime. Now you do miss out on the upside of paying carpet and then throwing it on the market, but it is what it is.
I think sometimes hanging around flippers, they'll judge you if you put sparkle gray quartz instead of Calcutta. They'll judge you if you're painting the cabinets rather than putting in new ones. They're like, man, you're a cheap flipper. But the name of the game of being a flipper is putting in the least amount of money to get the most amount of return on the back end.
Right.
So for cheap, that's kind of like...
And sometimes you just can't. It's like you're doing, in my opinion, a service for the community. Sure, are we making money? You have to. Anybody, you just can't do it all for free. But you're doing a service for the community, you have to do it within boundaries. And a lot of times, the margins are so thin, people think you buy it for X, you sell it for X, you make whatever in between, and it's just not even close to to reality. So you can't. You gotta stop somewhere. You gotta draw the line. So
at PT's Ranch a few days ago, we were talking, and you're like, Jay, with your personality type, I wouldn't recommend that you start a wholesaling business or that you even do direct to seller, right?
Yeah.
So with all that goes into that, there's numbers, there's statistics. You're running the CPM. You put some insight, and I love that you don't have anything to sell. So everybody else says, oh, it's so easy, there's nothing to it. You get a website, then everybody clicks, and you just make all this money. You get this CRM, it does everything for you. Or you just get, VAs, and VAs do all the work for you. You don't have to do anything, and everything's so easy. You're way more realistic with how you look at things. And when we were talking about building out the websites, you're like, Jay, for the SEO, you have to look at it every day. Every day something's going to happen, and you have to revise it.
PPC is what I was saying you have to look at every day, but SEO is just a long game. It was, years before my website was up, before it even started spitting out 1 or 2 leads a month, and then who knows what quality they are at that point. And I mean, outside of that, I just, I've seen both sides of the coin and what it's like building both sides of those business or being in both sides of it. So on the flipping side, when you have none of that marketing overhead, you can make big swings when the market's good. And a lot of the times, like, I choose to continue to flip because it's like, if you have a deal on the table that's 20 grand, and then if I wholesale it off and you go flip it and make 25 grand, let's call it, that's doubling your revenue. So to double your revenue, you've got to include flipping, or double the portion of your revenue that you don't wholesale and you flip. But if you're only wholesaling, the margins are really tight. Like, a majority of the businesses operate at like 30, 40, if they're lucky, break 50%. So, they make $1 million, they only made 300 to 500,000, versus you make $1 million, you made $1 million. Yeah. So, that's one reason. The other reason why is because I know it's like the sexy thing to go direct to homeowner and start marketing. And if it's something you're looking to do as like a passion project, that's a different story. But I was saying, I know you may be like a 7 out of 10, maybe an 8 out of 10. We haven't interacted a ton over the years, but from the traits that I know you to have, you can execute and run the flipping business flawlessly. It's the other side of things that you have to go so deep, and it'll distract you from your main earning business. And so I said, don't do it if you don't have somebody else to execute all of those things, because I don't think those are your strengths as far as like the integration side, the execution of, detail oriented, sitting behind the computer, building the CRM, tracking, every single mail piece you send out, setting up all the flows, and then getting a sales team to convert them, or you're taking the calls yourself half-ass. And that we're not following up. Like, those things are key. You need to have like key people in those roles to start getting to better margins. And it's like, you value having nobody relying on you, office. Like, you're just, you're very flexible. So I just didn't think it's for you, or as easy and glorious as it sounds.
I would hate to show up at an office every day. Yeah. But I mean, I see all the money that people make with wholesaling, and it's just a really interesting concept to have, because if you're like, which one was the easier thing to start? Would it be flipping or wholesaling? And especially to scale.
Oh man. I mean, scaling, either one of them I don't think is the most scalable business out there, first off. So, but secondly, scale wise, it's probably wholesaling, because construction has so many variables. There is far more capital required, like you said, all the purchase of the properties, your overhead's insane with your hard money payments and holding costs and contractors and Home Depot and all that.
And just because I'm curious, what's your monthly mortgage?
My monthly mortgage on my house?
From all your flips, and then even your commercial building that you run your wholesaling company out of, and then maybe you could even throw in all your rentals too.
I think the mortgages on my Oklahoma rentals is like 60,000-ish, 65,000. And then my office building, the mortgage itself and all the other stuff the mortgage is like 68, but then all your other stuff, maybe around 8 is like a break even number. So what are we at? Like just about 70, let's call it. Then my hard money payments, I would have to look. I know that last year when I was hyper aware of it, when I was low on cash, because you're running so lean all the time, trying to, get in those turns when the market's on fire. So flipping everything you have, I probably had like 35 or 37 properties that I owned at that time.
Oh my God.
And I think right around then my hard money payments are around 80,000 a month. Plus you've got marketing, and marketing shifts around. I think last year it was probably like, I try to keep it under 20 to 30. This year I'm just experimenting with a lot of different stuff I wasn't before, and split test, because I got sick and tired of all the outbound type marketing leads and wanted to focus on inbound. So they're just far more expensive. So
with all the things that you did in wholesaling, how did you learn how to do it? Because like the way that I run my business, so you learned under Galindo, who to my knowledge was doing things a lot how I do it. Just go to network with realtors, do things on MLS, just have other people bring you all the deals, but not really any marketing spend. When you broke away and went solo, how did you have the savviness to build out all those systems? Who taught you?
Nobody taught me. I mean, I learned from a lot of people along the way, but it wasn't like one specific person, like a course that it wasn't anything like that. It was just, discipline and execution. I just learned them one thing at a time. My background's engineering, so I can figure things out pretty well, and a lot of it was data driven. So I started with one marketing channel, which at the time was text message marketing, SMS marketing, and then what goes hand in hand with that is like ringless voicemails and stuff, because it's all very data based. Like you have to have a big database and know how to manipulate spreadsheets. And
to my knowledge, it was either you or Saray who was the first one in Vegas to do text message marketing.
Yeah, in 2018 it was fish in a barrel. It was awesome. Like nobody was really doing it. It was starting to get traction, but I mean, back then I used to be able to send out like 2,000 to 3,000 text messages and get a deal. And then little by little, as your delivery rates are dropping, your response rates are dropping, whatever, and you're tweaking things along the way. And I think like at the worst, it was like I had to send out 70 or 80,000 messages to get the same results. But they were pennies, so it wasn't a significant marketing expense. It just became a lot more difficult constantly trying to adapt, but those were the glory days for sure.
I haven't seen any statistics on this in a while, but I remember in 2017, I remember a statistic of people open 99% of their text messages and they answered this percentage of their calls and this percentage of their emails, and they opened this percentage of their mail. But at that time, it was 99% of their text messages.
Yep.
I wonder if now that's 2023 and so many people are doing sales text messages, if that open rate is dropping to like 70, 60, or 50.
Right. I think maybe they get open, maybe they don't even make it to your phone, because the carriers started being held accountable for you getting spam, not just who sent it wasn't only one responsible anymore. They started making the carriers responsible as well. They had the Shake and Stir Act come out. But yeah, that's pretty much what the statistic was. So I wasn't doing any direct mail or anything like that. I would just send out text messages that said, "Hey, I sent you a letter in the mail. Did you get it?" And they're like, "Yeah, I got it." Or, "What address did you send it to?" A postcard costs 40, 50 cents, whatever it is. It's like you get the same exact results, if not easier and better, and way more scalable for 0.7 of a penny. It was awesome. But
did you ever get in any trouble with it?
Text messaging, no. And I was very specific in how we handled it, but
there was people last year I know who got threatened with lawsuits for a bunch of people. Wholesalers were getting threatened because of the calling people who are on the do not call list.
So calling, yes. And I wasn't ever a huge fan of cold calling. Just because, again, that requires a lot of staff versus text messaging is, it's a machine automation that's setting things up. You do have to have people vetting things, but like think if you have a huge inbox of a bunch of FU, where'd you send the postcard to? Like you can scroll through 1,000 messages in like 3 minutes, just scrolling through. You can go through 100 and whatever. So you can go through a ton of text messages with very little labor, but cold calling you can't, and you have to be constantly training the teams, cycling the data. It's just way more complex, and there's more risk too, because you don't know what those people are going to be saying on the phone back to them. So any of the text message marketing I ever did was unbranded. But I did cold calling a little bit, and exactly why I didn't want to, like, I think it was like a year in or something like that. One of the VAs was just firing off our company name, every person that answered. So there's like this lady who's like a serial class action lawsuit lady, and she hit us up for a settlement. She said she was going to file something and blah, 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 but she wanted $18,000, and I think we settled for like $6,000 or something like that.
Yes, yeah. And there's professionals out there. They put their names on the do not call list, and they're just waiting.
Right.
They're just hoping that you call them.
Yep. Exactly.
Oh man. Since joining Collective Genius, they talk about all their systems of wholesaling all the time. So now I feel like I could be more savvy with it, because all of them are talking about their systems, their pay-per-click, how they bring it through, how they bring it to their teams, the whole entire process of it. I don't want to do that, but I'm like, I could if I felt like it.
Yeah.
But I'm interested, if you started over again, if you would choose wholesaling first to get the deal flow. And I always tell new agents, I always teach new agents how to wholesale, but that's obviously very self-serving, because if I'm the flipper and I'm telling everybody how to wholesale, then that means they'll bring me a deal. I want them to be very successful with it, because then I get more deals on my plate, and you don't know many flippers, so I'm going to be the only one.
Right.
So it's very self-serving, I guess. But
I think to start over, which one would you start with? I do think that if you don't have the capital initially, then you got to start wholesaling. But what I'll also say is that I started flipping from day one because Josh had investors and he had experience. So it's like I had all that runway of the learning curve was just cut. So then it was just learn it very quickly and then execute and then scale it up. Like then I could figure out how to scale it up with him. So learning how to flip very well taught me all the skills that I pretty much needed on a portion of the wholesaling side, at least on the dispo side, like knowing what to price stuff at, not sending out unrealistic deals that you're just wasting your time and stressed out and dragging sellers through the mud, extending and reductions and everything. It's like you get it right the first time. Pretty much, you try to, but you just know how to look at deals the way that a flipper would. So when I transitioned, it was a lot easier because I knew both sides of the business, So I knew if this deal came across my plate, this would look good. And that's what I would want. These are the things that I would look for to see. And then if I'm underpriced or overpriced, it's going to be very, very minor. So, and also if you're wholesaling, you probably know as well as I do, especially if you're working with a lot of wholesalers, newer ones, whatever. The newer ones are where you'll end up getting some of the best deals from, but vetting through so much junk before and holding their hand in the beginning. So if I have a wholesaler that just is not getting it, and they just continuously send you stuff, ARV this, rehab way lower than it should be, and here's your purchase price. And it's even if all of those numbers were accurate, which all of them are wrong, it's it still is not a deal. It doesn't pencil. They don't know how to underwrite all the holding costs, the selling costs. And
when I teach realtors how to do it, I continuously get that too. So they're like, hey, Jay, got this deal. It could totally go for 550 and I could totally get it to you for 515,000.
Yep.
And I say, okay, well, let's talk about this for a little bit. You're a realtor, so you know just as well as I do that if I buy this house for 515,000 and put no money into it and sell for 550 tomorrow, which I can't because your client can't get 550, I'm going to break even. You know what the costs are to sell a house. So let's take them through it. And it is very time consuming, but I have to go through it with them over and over again and just kind of teach them, here's what we have to look for. Here's what makes it a deal. Maybe this is a deal to an off-market person, to a retail buyer, but not to me. We got to get those numbers way lower. But could you get it lower? And then I make the ask. I think a lot of people give up way too easily.
That's what it is. And I learned this too because in the beginning, when me and Josh started, we had agents too. We had about 20, but we would do our educational classes for whoever was interested in being able to find deals, flip, whatever they want to do. And you pour and pour and pour into people, and 99% of people don't even execute. You're not diligent with it. They're not really learning. They don't execute. So you invest all this time in how many people are even really capable of doing it and execute it. It's not rocket science by any means. It just means it comes down to, do they execute or not, pretty much? Are they disciplined? Those two things, are they interested in it? Whatever.
Were you teaching people who wanted to be wholesalers, or were you teaching normal agents of how to recognize when something would be a deal?
Both. Well, not that they weren't trying, we were teaching essentially licensed agents how to underwrite properties, find the ARV comp, everything that goes into what does a deal look like, and then what action do you have to take. And if you think you need to write 5 offers a week, you're not even close. The action you have to take, but then the skills that you actually need in order to make a deal happen, and then just reverse engineer it. But every single one of those skills takes 100 hours repeatedly doing the same thing to really learn it, and then you get really good at it. But it's they would fall off before any of them even started. Some of them. And I
like that you mentioned that with, if you think it's going to be 5 offers, you're not even close,
right?
Because I like to set the scale with them of, if you're getting more than 1 out of 20 say yes on MLS, then you're offering way too high and it's probably not a deal.
Right.
1 out of 20 is even ambitious, but there has to be that many offers of things that you think could be deals. And to really kind of go through the emotions of, hey, say you're talking to a seller directly. If you're not uncomfortable with the offer that you just said, then you're probably offering too high.
Agreed. Yep.
I mean, you almost have to be embarrassed of your own offer.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to come up than it is to go back and get it for lower. It's a lot easier to come up in price. So, and when you offer that really low offer, you find out people's bottom dollar very quickly. Like, it's just human psychology. And I see it with myself too. Like at the end of last year, I had one that was 900,000 roughly. And I had some cash buyers coming in offering like 700, 750, not to flip, but to move into. And I was like, finding out real quick what's the most amount I'm willing to lose on it, or whatever it take for it. Whereas if they had offered higher, I would probably have the same mentality. Just, so when they offered 700, I found out really quickly what my bottom dollar was too. But because I understand that happens on both sides of the coin. So,
Did you take any major losses at the end of last year or early this year?
Yeah, I had, I think collectively it was of the 30, whatever I had, 30 something. I lost probably mid twos, something like that. But there were so many properties that year that, like I would buy, and some of them were longer escrows when you're direct to homeowner because you're figuring out probates, whatever, just a bunch of different issues. So they'd be 6 months out, and it's like, when I got it under contract, it was a smoking deal. And at the end, it was even a better deal. So it'd be like, I didn't even flip it, and I would just sell it to the hedge fund and get more than I thought I was going to if I flipped it, and I didn't put $1 into it. So there was a lot of them that were just all free money. So
how many deals did you do last year?
I think we did, I'd have to look, I think right around 150-ish, maybe 140.
And do you know about the breakdown of wholesales to flips?
I should know it. Probably 70% flips, maybe less, maybe like 60% flips, 40 wholesale-ish.
Of the amount of deals or the cash flow or the
amount of deals. But yeah, that's what we were saying too, is like even when I'm on 70% wholesale, 30% flip, it's like 50% or more of your revenue is going to come from flipping. Yeah. So that's a reason why flipping is great. But on the other side of the coin is, what does it require of me? Because like I've spent so many years, like 100-hour work weeks, and building the business or just operating it too. When we were just trying to scale it up, but then starting back over, going direct to homeowner, that was 2018. But it was like late nights over and over and over and over again. But you're building something that is like self-sustaining versus flipping is just like a hamster wheel all the time. And when you're not marketing and in control of that deal volume, like you're kind of at the mercy of when other people bring you stuff. Obviously that's going to depend on the outbound effort you take, but I had to continuously, if I didn't want to go to an investor meetup, or I didn't want to sit on a phone call for 30 minutes with an agent trying to, build a relationship with them or write all the offers, like all of that your deal flow comes from the communication that you're having with people, the effort that you're putting out, and that's just your time, period. Versus when you're wholesaling, it's pretty much a credit card. And once you build it out, you get your staff. Obviously, there's upkeep and there's a lot of different things to it. They're completely separate, different businesses, in my opinion. But it's you put money in and then you process all the leads and the revenue however best you can. But with flipping, it's a referral based business. It's just your time, period. Yeah. Your time.
And last year, so I was really interested about the numbers last year compared to this year, because this year you're wholesaling mainly to flippers, but last year there's almost free money given by the hedge funds who would pay full market value without it being flipped or anything. Yep. And it was just, from what I heard, you guys were getting 70,000 wholesale deals left and right.
There's limits. We did have some that I double closed and did that. But as far as the whole, and by double close, the funds would require you to hold it for a certain period of time. And then you also have to balance, if you're going to double close, these funds are ruthless. And a lot of them, unless you had a good relationship with them, they're not even going to go out and inspect the property or anything or get you like a real number or a contract until they have a contract with you. And if they had like certain thresholds, like they had limits on the amount of what the assignment fee could be, because they're, massive funds regulated. They have investor funds, so some of them are publicly traded stocks. So the way that they get their money, they have to be very thorough that they're compliant across the board. So they had limits on assignment fees. And then if you're going to double close it, you had to own it for some of them, you had to own for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And they're not even going to go in a contract with you until you own it. So you're taking the risk of closing on it to resell it to them for them, because I have watched them cancel across the board on 10 houses. And it's like, imagine if you were double closing all those and you bought them at the price that you basically just bought a bunch of properties at retail, you know, or close to whatever, close enough to where you're going to lose a lot of money. So there was like nuances to it. So there was a few that we did, they made sense as a smoking deal, as a flip. So it's like, let's bring it to the fun and just try to dispo it that way after you already owned it, because you had multiple exit strategies. But yeah, the other stuff was great because it was a lot of the ones that we would normally push off to our retail listing or agent to go list them, which is now, you know, they got to pick back up and build a new relationship with the seller. They got to have appointments, and they got to get the listing agreement, then they got to get listed, and the whole like it's a long conversion cycle on that for very small money. Then it was like our acquisition guys could be there at the appointment and sign the contract right then and there at a house that's worth $310, sign it at $280, assign it to the fund for $310. It was great, you know. So, but that, you know, I rode the train as long as I could, but I wasn't dependent on it.
What was the amount of money that they would cap you out at, like 10% or 15%?
Some of them were, some of them were 10%. Some of them were 7%. One was 9.5%. And then you always had to kind of know which one you're going with from the beginning for title company wise, how you're going to write the offers and what you're going to have signed, because not all of them would require not our simple 2-page contract. One of them began allowing me to do that because I had a good relationship with them, and then I was able to have a lot of conference calls with their legal team, and they reviewed our underlying contract, made sure that all the main things they're looking for, and then added verbiage like a special addendum. So then it's just easier when you have a 2-page contract versus a 12-page when you're with a seller. So then you had to know going up into it which fund you're going to kind of sell it to, and then you had to have your finger on the pulse of what cap rates they're buying at, because that would determine what their offers are. So then most of our offers were based off of rents in that scenario versus values. You know, value came into play, but there were some they bought over value because the rents were really strong in the area.
And the rents are really, it's just who's looking at the numbers, because they were going up so quickly that if you're going to take a comp, you know, 6 months ago, 3-bed, 2-bath house might be $1,600, and then a few months later it's $2,200 a month rent. So who's looking at the data?
You're saying for who?
For the hedge fund? Yeah,
they do. But I would work a lot with their underwriters, and they would say, hey, they just sent out a bulletin. We need to adjust our underwriting this much for rents, and I'm like, great. And then every property that we brought to them, a lot of them, they wouldn't just underwrite stuff for people all the time, but if they knew that it was going to be guaranteed volume for them, they would invest more time in it. But they would tell me, hey, they just bumped our cap rates up, meaning that we have to adjust our offers down, you know. And
one of my sticking points last year, and I'm sure you probably ran into the same thing, is I would know that the ARV is a certain amount, and then Kiavi or whatever hard money company that you're looking at, they do the ARV, and their ARV is 50,000 less than what you said.
Right.
And I'd end up arguing with them because I'm like, hey, can you take a look at my last 10 ARVs? Every time you did this with me, I end up selling it for what I said I would or more, but they just wouldn't. Sometimes they would budge. But I mean, I ran to that. That was a big sticking point for me. I mean, did you get that too, or did you have more leverage?
They didn't do that to me, but I also, I think they would do that when they saw how they have like risk profiles built out for all their borrowers, and the riskier somebody appears to them, they're just limiting your loan to value by coming in with a lower ARV. So you have to come in with more down payment. So whether or not your ARV is right or wrong, that wasn't really the question. It was more of like, what's your credit score? What's your track record? What's your experience? So they didn't really do that to me, but if they did, I would understand that it's probably just because the loan to value.
And I'd still end up getting the loan, but I'd have to put 20% down instead of 10%. I think there was one loan I put 23 or 25% down, and I still made tons of money on it, but there's still a discrepancy of that much.
Yeah, I kind of liked when, I prefer if you're using the hard money to leverage, It's obviously more risky. You pretty much have to, in a way, unless you just have a massive trust fund or really huge investors or rich parents, whatever. But you pretty much have to use hard money in the beginning. But my conservative approach to it is I rarely took their rehab funds. I would, if they would offer me 100% financing, I would never really, I don't think I ever did 100% financing with them, just because I liked when the properties closed. I had so much equity in all of them. My loan to values were super low that I knew that like cash was coming back in, and like those were like little nest eggs, versus it closes and pretty much all you get is maybe your rehab money and your profit, or just your profit if you're more leveraged and borrowed the rehab too. Like I liked the bigger checks when stuff closed.
In those days, I never took rehab funds because you put it on market and then in 5 days you get the offer and then 30 days later you close. Right now that I'm putting things on market for a month to 2 months, it makes a little bit more sense.
True. Agreed.
Especially with how much I'm growing right now. But
yeah.
How did you get the money to start?
I just worked my ass off for 3 years, and I worked for Josh and the investors and saved everything I had. I drove that, like I was telling you, I drove that box Cherokee. There's years that I made $300,000 and I didn't buy a new car. I kept my $1,500 Jeep. My mortgage was $1,600 and I didn't buy watches. I just didn't buy anything.
You were making that much money with Josh?
In my last year, it was, yeah. Yeah, but it was a small it was a single digit portion of the revenue that it generated.
Yeah.
So I would just had to generate. I didn't really think of it that way. I just thought of it as, all right, if I want to make this, then I got to go find 100 deals that are average of this. And if I can't if my average is low, then I need to get more deals or negotiate better deals, and then just do the tasks daily that made sure that I hit my goals.
So you had a pretty big nest egg.
I didn't have a ton of money. I had a couple $100,000 saved up in 2018. But that was like my life savings. Yeah.
And I think the first deals that I did with you was 2019.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then I heard, so I think I must have heard wrong, that you're like a 3-person crew that you started with or something like that. Like you, Corey, and some other person. It was,
yeah. So it was, well, first, when it's rough to split up from a business partner. It's like, divorcing your wife. Like, it's a very emotional thing, and especially when it's not just strictly business. Like, we had a really close relationship as well. It was very difficult. So there's like emotional trauma there of just, figuring it out and then starting over from scratch. For the last 3 years, you're around this team that you guys had together, your right-hand man, your mentor, your business partner, and before that we were pretty much best friends. So it was me and Josh. So it was like really rough when you separate and then you're just sitting at home by yourself. It's like it's hard. So yeah, I after that I was like, I never want to have a business partner again, just because I don't want to have to go through that or have to. It's hard too. The dynamic ongoing is like. It's one thing if you forget to do something, like you're like, oh shit, I forgot to do a request for repairs or whatever. I don't know if you're listing your houses or whatever you forget to do, you let down yourself and you do it. When you have somebody else that's counting on you to get things done and you have a million things going on, you feel bad, whether or not they're feeling a type of way. Like you just feel like you disappointed somebody else, And
at some point, does that make you work harder and be a better person?
I mean, I feel like I work as hard as I possibly can all the time, but I think. Yeah, maybe. I mean, to learn a new skill or trait.
All the people on the Lakers who said that Kobe was really mean to them and really harsh, but didn't Kobe get the best out of them? Didn't Kobe get them a chip?
100%. Agreed. Yeah, you're right. It probably, I always worked very hard, but I'm sure it pushed me to be better in a lot of different aspects that somebody, like having that a different level of accountability. But it's such a breath of fresh air when you're just by yourself. Yeah. So I did never want to have a business partner again. And initially I didn't even want to have really employees or a team or anything because I just didn't want to. But then eventually, it just became too much to handle in just a few short months of when I started marketing. So then I was going on a trip to Europe because I knew that I was going to get crazy busy again and be working like a maniac. So me and my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, and then we got engaged in Europe. But we went for like 20 something days to Europe because I'm like, I'm never going to do this again in my life unless I do it right now. So then I left and I had already started marketing. So I had appointments set up and leads and coming in. So Ryan started going on appointments and crushing it. And it was just such a better fit. So we would both still go on appointments, you know, and then it just like all the day-to-day tasks, I just started segmenting. I'm like, all right, well, these things do not take much skill, and it's 5 hours of my day. So then I brought on Kelly, and then it was just in my home office by myself, me, Kelly, and then, you know, my wife would be at work or coming and going, whatever. But it was just, then finally I was like, and then Ryan working from his house. And then we were just doing more and more and more deals. I just remember I had this whiteboard, and it was like, from when it was me and Josh, we'd have like 40, 50 properties on the board in different stages of flipping or in escrow to buy or sell. So you'd have like 40, 50 properties on the board. And I just remember whiteboard just blank and just like, all right, let's fill it, you know? So, and it would start to be like, then I get to the next column, and then by the time I was like breaking into that third column, I'm like, Kelly was already there, but I'm like, I think we got to get an office, and like, what am I doing here? Like, am I going to stay at this level, or if I'm bringing on more people, then we probably need an office. So then
that's great. So you scaled, and then you get into the office, and I mean, scaling is an interesting problem when it comes to flipping and wholesaling. It is my belief that wholesaling is probably a little bit easier to scale because there's not some of the barriers to funnels or something. It's not like you run into the contractor issue.
Right.
I remember I ran into Ryan Pineda in like 2018, and I'm like, he just did like over 100 flips in a year. So I'm like, what are you going to do next year? And he's like, Jay, I can't find the flippers. I can't find the contractors to fulfill all my flips.
Yep.
I'm just running into this barrier. How big do you think you can scale, or how big do you even want to scale? Like, are you happy with where you're at, or?
I think that there's only so much that you can do with certain sizes of teams, you know? So, and like little by little, every hire that I'm trying to make is going to make like a department run like the way that it should, where in the beginning it was like, all right, we have 5 people. Oh, and you mentioned Corey too. I was so big, like when Kelly and Ryan were taking over, I had Corey slowly taking over the MLS acquisition side of stuff, and he was rockstar at. But like, we would have a small team of 5 people pumping out 100+ deals between wholesaling and flipping. And it's like everybody's running around like crazy, so busy, like the quality of life of each of us. Like, I didn't have an issue with it because that's just how I'm built, but like not everybody wants that, you know? So you like long term, you don't want people feeling that like so overwhelmed, one, and with that comes stress, and with that comes, it's just not the environment that you want. So you got to like really start to expand the team if you want everyone's workload reasonable. Okay. And then also if you expand the team, you're less exposed. There's less, because like if the life circumstance changes and they can work less or more, or they quit, whatever, like you're not like, it's not like, wow, 20% of my team just fell off.
And okay, so let me say this. It might be a limiting belief, but I have a belief that you can only scale flipping so big. I believe it's not like there is a limitation, but we've seen the people who had all the money that was ever printed, being OfferPad, Zillow offers, Open Door, Redfin, all the iBuyers.
Losing millions of dollars a year.
Yeah, they had the cheapest money, cheaper than we could ever get, more money than we could ever get, more systems, more processes, more CEOs getting paid everything. I mean, if you want to talk about running a business right, they had all the business majors running the business right, and they lost hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yep.
So, I mean, I've only seen tight flipping companies end up being successful. And after 100 deals, I mean, there's like one group that we know in town, maybe 2, that do about 300.
Right.
And they do it well. But
and they have to go to different markets, have full staff, and you need an exorbitant amount of capital to continue to scale that. It's doable, but that's what I was saying before. It's like wholesaling is more scalable. One, because your conversion cycle is quicker, your sales cycle is quicker. You know, it can't, like, from, you know, contract acquired to money realized is a lot shorter than, it's shorter in general than flipping, even if you just bought from a wholesaler. But when you're direct, like when you're the wholesaler, the direct to seller, and you're the flipper, like that conversion cycle is very, very long compared to a lot of other businesses. So like how quickly can you turn things becomes an issue. And yeah, scalability, risk, all that stuff. And the flipping is even more constrained because, you know, you're so much more exposed to market shifts. Like you can't just pivot instantly. And it takes so much longer to turn all of your money. So like then contractors becomes an issue and all these different things. And you have to become a contractor and hire out all your staff. And again, it's a headache. That's what I was saying. It's like, I don't think either one of them is the answer for the most scalable business possible, but it's a great way to make a lot of money in a short period of time that you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do. I'm
surprised that the iBuyers didn't just do wholesaling and sell their houses to flippers like us, because I mean, flipping is a great way to make money, but it's also a fantastic way to lose money. And they lost money. If they would just wholesale the contracts, and just like realtors pay Zillow, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for leads, I would happily pay them tens of thousands of dollars for leads. I mean, Zillow is how, you know, I was at the Win, or I was a dealer for 7 years. I was at the Win for 4 years. And how I was able to leave my my dealing job to be a realtor is I just gave Zillow thousands of dollars and they gave me all those leads back. So I went from 14,000 to 87,000 to 114,000, and then I could quit my job. And then they raised the price of everything. But if they could if we could pay them for wholesaling leads, I would do that in a second.
And they have them. The leads are no different, to be honest. Like, obviously you'd want to tweak.
And they're a trusted company.
Yeah, they're a trusted company, but they were not in it for the real estate side of stuff as much. Like, hence why Zillow was in and out. I think they realized quicker than Open Door did, but they're different companies as well. But they're data companies. Yeah. They know that if they dominate a market, like as Zillow is the Google of real estate, let's call it, Zillow pretty much is. So like they know that even if they offer all these services, they're going to be the go-to no matter what for every aspect of real estate, right? So even if they lose money on some houses, you know, their data company and revenue is growing even more and more and more as they become like the household name. And the data companies sell at 20x. So they may lose here, but they made on the data company, and that revenue on the data company is worth 20x. So that's like my opinion of why they went the route that they did. But Open Door is a different story. I think they were trying to compete with Zillow, and I'm sure I've noticed now with the market shift. I love when I hear my sales guys say that the appointment they're getting an offer from Open Door. I'm like, great. Yes. They're going to price anchor for us, because their offers now, like before they'd be at retail or close to whatever. Now their offers are at ours or lower or very close to ours, but we would beat them out when their offers were higher than us, because you don't have like that same human interaction. You know, you're just a number in the queue.
And then they ask for the request for repairs for like 15,000.
Right.
And now you're really the winner.
Yep.
And now they're upset because they're like, hey, I thought you just said you'd pay cash for it. Why are you asking me for repairs right now?
Right. And they don't have somebody that they can just text on a Friday. Like they're worried about there's no that customer service isn't there.
So with how far you think you could scale it, would you say, I mean, do you think there's more to go with your business, or do you think you're happy with where you're at?
I mean, there's always more to go, and we're always trying to grow. But I think right now what I'm trying to do is always grow and do more deals or actually, I don't even care about the number of deals, more revenue. So always trying to grow that top line, but more importantly, your bottom line, but is make each of the departments like rock solid to where they're like everybody's job is like not so spread out. Because when if you have like a sales guy that is doing like partially doing transaction coordinating and partially trying to do follow-up, whatever, when you really segment the portions of the sales process and like who should be responsible for it, you're so much more efficient. All of them are way more happy and effective. So like if you separate those things out, everybody just becomes like your business just is far more solid. So yeah, and not to mention that if you're trying to like hire more salespeople and you are trying to find this incredible outgoing personality salesperson that's trustworthy and like has all your core values and morals, right? And then you also want them to be organized. You also want them to, remember how to do follow-up, like all of those different traits. Like that person, every time you have to find a unicorn in every aspect of the business. When you separate all this stuff and have a little bit bigger of a team, are you less efficient? Yes. But you're not constantly filling in all those gaps a lot of times, or having, things being done half-assed in certain areas. And then if you need to ever replace them, you don't need to find that unicorn. You just have to find a few of the traits. And the hiring part in any of the businesses, I think, the most crucial thing.
And on hiring, so when you bring on a new person, I'm so glad you brought that up, by the way. So when you bring on a new person, I heard you give them the DISC test, or...
Not the disc. And just for the record, I'm not an expert at hiring, but I'm trying to learn to be better.
You are in this conversation.
Okay, I'll take that. We use predictive index. So, and it's pretty simple, but just a hiring process that kind of, a lot of times I had found trying to convince somebody because I know how awesome it is to work at our office. It's like, there's so much freedom. We get IPA Fridays. There's very flexible schedules, and it's just awesome. And everybody's like a family. So I know how awesome it is, and it's hard not to brag about that. But more and more I realize is you want to tell people it sucks. This is what you're going to be doing, because you're going to find the resilient ones. So on the application side and interview side, but then you want them to jump through some hoops. They got to, go and apply through one of the, Wise Hire, pretty much all uses Wise Hire now, but what are they, Indeed, all those ones. But now Wise Hire kind of covers all of them. So you want to get their applications in and them to go through the application process. Then you want them to, don't even talk to them until they have done what's outlined in there, which is take the predictive index, both steps of it. So I would get 200 applicants in, and of those 200, you'd be lucky to get 30 people to take both sides of the predictive index, and then go through a phone interview call, and then another phone interview call, or a phone interview call with somebody who's screening, and then you do an in-person interview. And then after the in-person interview, if you really like somebody, and you can kind of you can shift those steps around, but you shouldn't. But then you make them set up 3 reference calls with past supervisors, or you could do 1 coworker, but 3 past supervisors. They have to tell hey, here's the person, and don't I wasn't hey, I'm free at 11, make it work for them. I was tell me who the 3 people are. Okay, cool. I need you to set me up calls. Just let me know when to call them and what day. Do they follow through on that? Then you do the calls and hear the reference calls and then get them in. But yeah, the predictive index is
So the whole time is part of making sure that you're hiring the right person in terms of personality, and then also a shit test to see if they perform on things and follow through. Because you're giving them tiny little tasks that are easy to do, but also easy not to do if they're lazy.
Right.
So how bad do you want it? Are you going to go through each step of this process?
Yep, exactly.
And then are you the one doing the interview with them?
The in-person, yeah.
And I feel like I've taken these at companies, at Cosmopolitan when I was a dealer. And I don't think that they chose me because I don't think I was who they wanted on the predictive index. But for each, what's the thing that you're looking for your salespeople? Are you hiring your contractors the same way, or project managers? Because you're looking for different mindsets. So does the predictive index tell you, how does it differ from the DISC? Because I heard it's really similar.
They all are. Yeah, Myers-Briggs, DISC, predictive index, they are all very similar. Predictive index is just the one that I know very well, and I like it better because it's just, not one, there's the cognitive side of things, which is important.
Also, I'm going to take this when we're done, and I'm going to see if you're going to hire me.
Okay.
Let's see.
It depends. I would probably hire you for something.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're just completely unhireable. It really depends. So the way, and predictive index is, I like it because it's not just, DISC. I don't even really know DISC, but the 3 traits, predictive index has 16 personality profiles. And then you just remember and you just get a feel for what type of person somebody is when you meet them.
So it's 16 profiles.
Yeah, it'll be altruist, maverick, captain, promoter, persuader, collaborator, stuff like that. So adapter, there's 16 different ones, and for your sales role, you're going to want mavericks, captains, promoters, persuaders, maybe a venture, whatever. So, but those are what you'd want. And then it's what does your acquisition team look like? Does it look like a team where they're doing a bunch of stuff? Then you probably can't have the absolute best closer because he also has to be organized. So you got to figure out the balance there. So you pick one of the 4 profiles, or you build out an ideal profile, and then just make sure that they fit. Because you could look at 50 resumes that were all right, whatever, this company laid off all their salespeople. You look at their resumes, they've all worked there for 10 years. You could see performance and whatnot. Sure, that's obvious, but a lot of that, they'd have to provide to you. But you could see 50 of the same exact resumes and see, 10 different personality profiles. You never know that on a resume, but I'm not even gonna have an interview with somebody if they're a guardian or craftsman for sales. Like, they're just not going to like the rejection. They're not going to like this. And it's nothing when after people take it, sometimes people are like, I don't want to take it. What's it going to say about me? It's like, it's going to say exactly what you know about yourself. It just tells me because I don't know you. So like after they take it, they're going to be like, oh, that is me. I am great at working with other people. I do like things to be organized. Wow. I do like when there's a process in place, or I don't, whatever. Like, it's going to match exactly who they know they are.
I know the Myers-Briggs very well. So I know the exact people who would say, I don't want to take it. You know, and then there's the certain people who are certain personality types. Like, yeah, let me go. Like, if you're ENTP, you're like, oh, there's personality tests. Let's go. Let's see what I am.
I've taken Myers-Briggs before. I think that's what I am.
You'd probably be ENTP, but you might also be ENTJ.
I think I'm ENTP.
Yeah. And then at worst, you might be, it depends whether you're introvert or extrovert. So you might be INTJ or INTP.
On the predictive index, my wife laughs at me because I kind of say I'm introverted, but it just depends on my environment. But like on PI, I'm on the social side.
Yeah. If you're nuanced in thinking, those are inherently introverted traits. So even though I am extroverted, I still need a certain amount of time per day by myself to be with my own thoughts, to think amongst myself.
Yeah.
Because if you're a thinking person, you need to think, you need time to think, you need time to ponder,
right.
You know? So, it's just different aspects of it. But do you pay for that service?
Yes. It's an annual subscription, but you could take it. It's unlimited. You can send it to whoever you want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm taking it after this. Yeah. We're gonna see what's going on.
Do the personality, the cognitive. The first part is like takes 5 minutes, whatever. The second, that's like your behavioral one. The cognitive one is timed 12 minutes, so you want to be focused.
And where do you post this? Indeed.com or?
On Wise Hire goes across the board with all of them. So if somebody is interested in the position and they do the little short application process, it sends them like, hey, thanks for applying. Send us a video talking about who you are and why you're interested in this position, and then click this link to take our personality assessment or behavioral assessment, whatever, and then they take it.
I was speaking with Johnny Richardson yesterday, because he has a whole wholesale team. He was talking about how much of the revenue of the wholesale that the salesperson gets. I don't know if you'd be okay with sharing this right now, but like, what percentage does the acquisition guy get of the total wholesale fee in your company?
Yeah, I think industry standard is anywhere. It depends if they're a closer or a setter, opener. And it can be anywhere. If they have a base salary, it could be as low as 3 to 5% plus a commission. Plus a base. If they're a closer, straight commission, I've seen a lot of people between 8 up to 12% or so.
Okay.
Yeah, 8 to 12%.
Because he was giving 20%, and I'm like, man, are you sure that's enough? But
if your margins are 30% and you pay somebody another 10% on that, like you're down to 20%.
Yeah.
And that's, takes your business down 30%. You know what I mean? Like they're getting paid on the gross amount.
Yeah.
But
I think he's doing free things, by the way. Like, hey, just call these NOD lists or NOS lists.
Oh, that's totally different. If you're, it's inbound versus, if I had somebody that's just calling off an Excel sheet or like a list that I put together, that's far different than you spent, $40,000 on marketing that month for inbound leads. Like, that's a different story.
Because I don't think he gets pull through marketing. I think he just gets generic lists that we all get. And then I'm sure every person on the NOD list is getting 15 calls within the first week.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If you have stuff like that, that's a more reasonable. And then if we get like referrals from a friend of a family, whatever, I wouldn't pay out that percentage on when there's no marketing cost to it. So but usually marketing expenses are going to be about 15% in this business. So you probably would end up giving that additional percentage.
One of the other questions
10 to 15%.
I really want to ask was, you are a licensed realtor, right?
Yes.
When did you get your when did you start within flipping with Josh and all that? And when did you get your real estate license?
I did my first deal in 2013 because I was spending summers like interning with Josh, basically doing his paperwork and stuff and learning how to look on the MLS for deals. So I did my first deal then, but I didn't want to quit school. So I graduated in 2015. That's when I went full time. And then, me and Josh partnered up and then took off, and We were doing, I think our first year we did 75 deals and then 100 each year after that. And that whole period of time I was not licensed. And then I had to get licensed when I was going to be selling my own properties, because you got to kind of keep the margin. Because if you pay a realtor 2 or 1 or 2% or whatever, or even flat fees, like it just, sometimes the deals are very thin. You can't do it unless you're listing them yourself. So in 2018 I got licensed, and I still do use my license now, but then at the beginning of this year, end of last year, Jamie took over all my listings too, so I'm not doing the listings anymore.
Yeah. And then I'm kind of where you were a few years ago, I guess, to where I list all my own, because it's so, I think it's a false delegation anyways, because the thing you should delegate is a transaction coordination.
Yeah.
But if someone's like, hey, I sent you an offer, hey, here's the offer, here's the deal, can you put a deal together? If I had someone else list it, then that person would just be calling me, playing phone tag with all that. So I'm not delegating anything. The only thing that there is to delegate is the paperwork.
Yeah, and I think that model of hiring it out is when, like, she's been on our team for 2 years, so she's been in transaction coordination. She's been in like every aspect before that, so she understands. She knows where to find like generally what we want for the property. Like all that information, the back and forth is already done. It's just
she's
like
in the office and you're around her and stuff.
Yes, yeah, she's on the team, so it's like it's just a lot easier. Versus if I was hiring a third party realtor, like another agent that I randomly picked, it's kind of pointless, right?
And the reason why I want to ask that is because I think, like I said before, flipping houses is a great way to make money. It's also a fantastic way to lose money. I think the number one way to lose money, and I won't call them out, but let's say there's a company called Old Eastern, right? And they put out deals and they say, hey, you're going to for sure get $650,000 for this deal. You look at comps and you're like, I don't think you could get more than $580,000. Yep. If I have a contracting issue and we have to repaint the house, that'll cost me $3,000. I get a break-in, might cost me $1,000. Get a bad break-in, might cost me $3,000. Nothing will cost me $70,000. Nothing could make a flipper lose more money than thinking you were going to sell it for $650 and you only sell it for $580.
Agreed. Yep.
And I think it's valuable to be a realtor first, because if you actually practice it, you have a better idea and sense of what ARVs are. Do you think that having your license like helped you with that? Or would you say that someone should get licensed to be a flipper?
I mean, your license makes no difference in the knowledge you have. Like you've seen how a lot of agents are, like they don't get it. And that's how we're able to get deals on the MLS, or the property needs it. But a lot of times it's just, inexperienced realtors or uneducated. But I don't think, having your license, you're just learning. So if you have more time, under practicing and learning through those years, you're going to know more than if you didn't. But I didn't have my license those first 3 years, and it made no difference.
And you're crushing it.
You just learn what you learn, and you're good.
And then through trial and error and doing a lot of comps, a lot of comps, then you figured out the market.
Yes.
Yep. Were you all acquisition back then, or were you driving to the properties and looking at rehabs?
I was in charge of all the acquisitions. And of course we would tag team it, but that was my responsibility. So acquiring all the properties through MLS, wholesaler, auction, which was few and far between, but all of that. And then, we would wake up at 5 a.m, go load up my Jeep with tile from Floor & Decor, drop it off, go to the properties, count every single can light, the door hinges, the handles, the faucets, light fixtures. And then after you order them all on Amazon, or have to go get stuff, pick it up from Home Depot, you got to go to the property and set it out where it goes. Because if you have the way our contractor was, that it wasn't ideal, but like you would put a bathroom faucet, like everything piled in the front, and you'd have a bathtub faucet sitting on a kitchen sink or on a sink, and then, or the chandelier is over here in the bedroom, and then there's a ceiling fan in the bathroom, like stuff like that. Like, so you have to go set everything out. But then doing all the bids and going through line item by line item, trying to make sure that they hit your budget, and then recomping. We were doing everything A to Z. That's why it was very high stress, because our team was so small. So me and Josh were working like maniacs, and it just creates more mistakes, more stress, more pressure on everything, and limits growth. So it was a grueling 3 years, but I feel like it made me into the person I am today. Yeah.
Where do you want to take things next? Like 5 years from now, and 5 year plans are bullshit anyways, but 5 years from now, I mean, do you want to flip commercial real estate, do multifamily? Do you think you could use your skills of getting deals from single family houses and translate it to just add another zero, and instead of a $500,000 house, a $5 million, a $50 million, $500 million?
Of course. I mean, it's just, again, like as I'm I'm growing my family now, so I have 2 little girls, and everything that I decide to do in business is just takes away there. It's like, do I want to do education? Well, that's going to be another full-time job because I'm not going to half-ass it. And then not to mention, is it another full-time job? It takes away from my existing business, which is running smoothly and can run even more smoothly if you work out these little kinks. So it's like everything you do takes away from here. And to me, eventually I will dive back in, but to take over the world mode, which I'm always trying to push and ambitious. But for me, it's important that I'm present for their life as much as I can, because I already do work a lot. So if anything I do, there's going to be that learning curve. There's going to be the additional risk. I do have people depending on me for, my family and then my team. So I just have to be careful what I spend my focus on. So that being said, I want to continue to grow the existing flipping and wholesaling business and refine it. And then I think eventually, if anything, I could do some commercial stuff because I've done a few land deals in some apartment complexes, and those have been some of the best deals I've done. But I think the game is in flipping businesses, essentially, like to find businesses with recurring revenue, because just like the Zillow thing we were talking about earlier, they have enterprise value and they sell at a multiple. What are our businesses worth? Nothing, especially with us not in them, so they're worthless essentially. And you'd be lucky to get like a half multiple on the fix for a wholesale business. And I don't even know many people that have sold them, and not for significant amounts, versus if you have like a recurring business in the right industry and it's built right, like you could, and you don't even have to go build them. You could go buy businesses, and all the skills that I'm learning now of hiring, refining, tracking, operations, like all of those are key skills that you'd need to be able to scale businesses up. So I feel like I have a good grasp on different aspects of it. So if you get a good business in a good industry and you can scale it up and do it over and over and over again, you'll sell those businesses and make way more money than you ever would in real estate generally. So
that's big. Well, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you came on. Is there anything else you want to add? I'm going to my first CG conference.
Nice.
This October, man. So I don't know what it did for you, but
it's great.
I know you've been in there for how many years now?
I think 3 years now.
3 years?
Yeah. It's just hard to find people that are hustling and good character and put them all together, and where they actually have time to hang out. Because most of those people, we don't have friends. We just work, and you have your family. So
work's the hobby.
Yeah.
And then where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook. On Instagram, I'm kcp.ryan. And Facebook, same thing. Just search me. And Yeah, go. I would say, if anything, bring us deals.
Yeah. Bring you deals. So
I'm taking that away from you, but
yeah, no, send deals to you. I run out of money quicker than you, so I can only take on like 15 deals at a time. That's it. You can take on 35?
Yeah.
Yeesh.
I don't want to. It's not fun, but
no, we have to do it. Yeah. All right, thanks, man.
Yep, no worries.
Thank you for watching this episode of the PaperTrails Podcast. To reach out to Casey Ryan, go to kcp.ryan on Instagram. That's CASEYP.Ryan on Instagram. And if you're looking to be a flipper, a wholesaler, or even a realtor, contact me on Instagram at VegasFlipperJ, and we'd love to help you out. Thanks.